we're delighted to have you here for this year's conference presented by Christie Digital at the 50th edition of the Toronto International Film Festival. My name, if you don't know already, is Jeff McNaughton. I'm TIFF's Vice President of Industry and Theatrical. I also program Prime Time. A little series called Origin is premiering today, and so you should definitely check it out after this. It's a pleasure to introduce this session, Visionaries, with Andrea Scrosati. Andrea is Fremantle's Group Chief Operation Officer and Chief Executive Officer, Continental Europe, championing auteur-driven cinema, ambitious co-productions, and fearless innovation. Andrea has reshaped Fremantle's drama and film division into a bold global force and positioned the company at the forefront of the industry today. Andrea will offer his expertise as we look at the future of filmmaking, one grounded in creativity, cultural resonance, and the belief that authentic, powerful stories can transcend all borders. Our programming is made possible by the support of all of our sponsors and our partners. A sincere thank you to our presenting partner, Rogers, our major sponsors, RBC and Visa, and our major industry supporters, the Ontario Creates and Telefilm Canada. I'd also like to give a shout out to the Hollywood Reporter for supporting this visionary session.
Thank you.
So you've had a busy couple of days.
Oh, wow. Yeah, busy in the last 10 days. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Fremantle was in Venice recently and picked up some pretty impressive hardware. Congratulations. Can you tell us about the experience and what it was like?
Yeah, no, thank you. We are thrilled. We co-produced Jim Jarmusch's movie that won the Golden Lion, so that has been an incredible experience for us. And then we produced the movie from Paolo Sorrentino, La Grazia, where the main lead, Tony Servillo, won the Coppa Volpi. And it's a movie where I'm personally very connected with. It's the story of President of the Republic in his last 3 months, and wherein his political power is not so relevant anymore, but he's confronted with some really important ethical decisions on certain laws he has to sign or not. And also it's the story of the relation between a father and a daughter, and I think it's a politician that puts in front of everything else ethics, what's right for the country he leads, and what is the right thing to do. And I kind of think it's a rare definition today. So actually, I'm very proud of that. And also, we had produced a very small movie from second-time director called The Kidnapping of Arabella, where with Chris Pine actually starring also, where we got the lead female. So in the Orizzonti section. So a really, really fascinating experience.
Congratulations. I was hoping we could start this conversation. I like starting with kind of an origin story of yourself in a way and how you got started. And everyone here likely came to be part of this industry because they were inspired by a film or a series or a person or a mentor. What brought you to this industry?
I think my story is a little bit of a sequence of sliding doors, because I started by pure chance, very, very young, at 20 years old, as the spokesman of a political party that was not what my family wanted. They wanted me to study at university, and not what I expected. It was a particular time in Italy. I'm born in Rome and grown up in Italy, where and this party was focused on fighting against organized crime and corruption. And in that time, those years, especially mafia was hitting hard and killing judges and politicians and journalists and priests. So it was a very idealistic moment for me. And then after 4 years, I left that. And I had met a journalist in that experience that asked me, why don't you come with me to the States? It was 1994. And there was the World Cup, the FIFA World Cup. And he was planning to do a daily TV show on that. And that was kind of interesting, but what happened in that edition, I'm sure somebody remembers, Diego Armando Maradona was expelled for doping. And he had done some pretty strong statements about FIFA before that happened. So, long story short, we happened to do the only interview he did after he was expelled.
Oh, wow.
And that actually opened to me a really fascinating world about telling stories that mattered. So then I went back to Rome. I opened my own PR company that worked for several clients. That included a lot of talent, international personalities. I was blessed. I did work with the Dalai Lama for a few years. And then corporations. And among these corporations, there was News Corporation. And then in 2003, News Corporation decided to create a pay television in Italy, merging the two existing pay TVs and creating Sky Italy.
Right.
So I worked actually together with a very close colleague and friend that is here, Raymond Jaffe, to support that launch. And then one day I get summoned in New York, and I get an offer I could not refuse to actually enter the company. And so I went there, and after some time I became head of all content, and that meant the all news channel, the programming, but also the original productions. And there I started getting involved in the production process. Especially, I had a really strong passion project that was a book I had been incredibly moved by that was called Gomorrah. So I created with a group of people a show called Gomorrah that, and that then brought to other similar productions. And ultimately, after 11 years, I decided it was the time to go on the other side of the desk and on the production world, and I was blessed to be able to join a company like Fremantle.
And of those experiences and your position now with Fremantle, what was one or two things on that journey that stick with you today in terms of your leadership style and approach?
Look, I think there's a lot of things happen, but I think ultimately it's never stopping to be curious and listening. I mean, look, if you're listening to your constituency when you're doing politics, you're listening to your clients when you're doing, you have an agency, you're listening to your customers, to the audience when you are, on the broadcast side, and then to your talents. But really is also more listening and be curious of what's going on everywhere you are. That actually never changed. So in my life today, I travel a lot. That is nice, but unfortunately with schedules that are always pretty tight. But I will always, I did it yesterday here when I landed, I will always escape 2 or 3 hours and walk in the street, go in a market, if I can, take a subway or on a bus. Go in a shop, hear what people say, and that's where actually I think I get the most interesting ideas, probably.
Amazing. I was curious in terms of, when you entered Fremantle, in terms of where the company was at that stage. I'm sure curiosity was very important in terms of kind of stepping into a leadership position, understanding, what Fremantle's focus were, but also at what stage did you start to shape your own priorities in terms of seeing, where the company can go, and what were some of those priorities?
Look, first of all, I had worked with Fremantle on the other side when I was at Sky. One of the things we did at Sky Italy with Fremantle was we brought, for the first time in the world, behind the paywall, X Factor and Got Talent, and it was a fascinating thing to do because everybody told us it would have not worked. Because nobody had done it. Those kind of shows had always been on free-to-air channels. And they ended becoming one of the most important components of the programming of Sky. So I had a massive consideration for what Fremantle was doing. And when I joined, at the same time, John Mullen became the group CEO. And I think we completely agreed on the idea that, look, the company was doing great and fantastic, but you need to change, you need to evolve. And look, in my personal view, everybody speaks about change, okay? And you will not find one person that doesn't say, no, change is important. But I think what happens in organizations is there is always the openness and willingness to change things when they are not working, okay? Or when a competitor comes out and has something better, or when your customers say, that's not really what we want. I think real change is changing things that are working. Right. And that's where you make the difference, okay? That's where you need to take the risk. Because the reality is, in the world we live, there's going to be something, there's going to be somebody, something's going to happen in 2 years that even if you're doing it the best way in the world, somebody's going to do it better. And more importantly, I think, if you work in our sector, people will want something different. And will not will not just continue to get the same thing, even if it's very successful. So that change means doing the same things you were doing in a different way. I'm not saying stop doing the things, but also start doing different things. Okay? Yeah. And look, and I don't want to sound arrogant. I don't think risk and change just for taking risk and change is the right thing. That's just arrogant. Okay. You need to have, I think, always an idea of where you want to go, what is the direction. Because if you have that, and then you take risk, some of these risks, by definition, will not work out. But then if you have a vision of where you have to go, you will learn from that mistake, and ultimately you will go there. So going back, sorry, a long answer to your question, but going back to your question, Fremantle was, an incredibly successful company in unscripted across the world. I mean, in every territory. I just cannot say, for example, how incredible it is, the team that is here in Canada, led by Michaela. But the company had already started looking to scripted, and it was mainly in the world of drama. Right. And that's where we felt the need to double down and really invest in this area. And then what happened was we realized that we had the blessing to work with incredible talent in drama, but that talent that was coming from, a lot of times was coming from the movies industry. So it was important for us to be able to offer them the possibility to work with us also on movies when they wanted to go back doing that. And a very good example is Paolo Sorrentino, that joined. The first thing he did with Fremantle, and interesting enough, I was not still in Fremantle, but I actually was the person who commissioned that show, was The Young Pope, the HBO show with Jude Law. Mm-hmm. But then in 2020, after COVID, he, in the middle of COVID actually, he came to me and said he wanted to go back and do a movie, and this movie was really important for him because it was the hand of God and it was the story of how his parents had died, a story he had never told. He didn't even want to speak about. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was crucial that he did that with us, but that he also felt that Fremantle was a place where a cinematographer of his level could feel confident he would have had everything that was needed mm-hmm. best. So that's why, we invested a lot in that area.
I would love to talk more about that kind of relationship building that you do with filmmakers and talents. But before we get there, you did mention the idea of being curious and listening to whether it's audiences or kind of, what's happening in the social climate as well. When it comes to audiences, how do you balance listening to audiences versus giving them something fresh that they might not even know they want?
Okay, that's a really good question. Well, first of all, we obviously, our job is fantastic because we are at the initial component of the relation with the creatives, and we help them, we support them do their projects, but at a certain point then we are not the ones that will deliver those projects to the audience. So there is a moment where then you start interacting with a buyer. Is that a platform? Is that a linear television? Is that a movie theatrical distributor in the case of movies? So I think there is, it's fair to say that there is a lot of a lot of exchange in this process. However, if I had to tell you what I personally think, and I'm sure we're going to discuss innovation, we're going to discuss kind of technology. We live in a world where the word algorithm and recommendation engine is used hundreds of times. And look, don't get me wrong, I completely appreciate the value of data, and having worked on a pay TV for 11 years, I do that even more, because obviously that is a fundamental component of how you run a business. But I do think this, and I think it applies to the life of all of us. And it doesn't apply only in this world where we operate. When we go out and have dinner in a restaurant, or we go in arts exhibition, or we go to we do a trip, or we go and watch a movie, and we go on a TV show. Ultimately, there is one thing that makes the difference. It's when we get surprised. Okay, when you eat that thing and say, oh, okay, this is not what I expected, or when you go to a movie and you say, okay, this is not what I expected. And the power of surprise is that then you will go back, you will think about it, you will discuss with your friends, you will discuss with your family, and it puts it in a completely different space. Okay. So going back to algorithms and recommendation engines, while I do see the importance of that technology, and obviously, look, if for a streaming service, it means it guarantees that the customer that gets on his own page feels a familiar place, okay?
Yeah.
But by definition, a technology that is based on what you have already seen, a technology that's based on what has been already done, will not surprise you. I mean, that's where the creative spark of human genius comes. And so that is what, if I had to say what we try to look for, that is what we try to look for. Now, it's very difficult to find it. And sometimes it's a combination of really a lot of factors, not only of the creative, but also of what's going on in society. Look, we had, we produced a small movie in Italy by a first-time director. She's a fantastic actress, very successful. She never directed. It's a black and white movie on domestic violence, okay, in the 50s in Italy. Now you feed that in the algorithm.
Right.
Okay. I don't even tell you what the answer is, okay?
Yeah.
So this movie has grossed 36 million euros at the box office in Italy, has now grossed more than 15 outside Italy. It's the most successful movie of the last 10 years. And the reason is because people went there and they cried, they laughed, and they got surprised at the way she, as a geniusly, had treated such a dark subject. So I think that's what we look for.
I love that response, and it's interesting because, even at TIFF, when your role is programming, films or series or content, we're often asked by media, it's like, how do you choose? And I think that notion of being surprised is what my mind always goes to. It's like, I'm looking for things that surprise me, and I think the surprise is actually what sticks. You remember the surprises versus the thing you've had before.
But look, I will mention two shows that are not produced by Fremantle. I would love we did them. I mean, some of the two probably most successful shows on Netflix from the UK in the last 18 months are Adolescence and Baby Rendering. That they do not tick any of the algorithm kind of points. And I think, when I watched the first episode of Adolescence, I was like, wow, okay, that's different. I did not see something like that before. And then I sit down. Look, again, just imagine some of the colleagues that work with me, and frankly, I imagine some of the buyers getting pitched a show where they say, oh, and we're going to do one episode that is only session between the kid and an analyst with a fixed camera for 45 minutes speaking. you like that, huh? And you see the buyer say, okay, do you have something else to pitch? And that has been one of the most successful shows. So.
Yeah, no, it's a great example. We talked a little bit about origin, and I want to move to kind of strategy. So Fremantle has produced over 75 films since 2020, from world-renowned visionaries to exciting debut directors. Of these productions, what are some projects that you were incredibly proud of from a kind of, passion side of things, but you wish more people saw because for some reason maybe an audience wasn't ready for it, or maybe even on the flip side of things, maybe you and your company wish you handled slightly differently?
Okay, no, that's a good question. Also, slightly, you put me in the spot on that one. I think if I think recently, there's a movie we produced recently called Queer with Daniel Craig. It's a complicated movie, but I loved it. It's anybody who has loved the Beat Generation and that kind of books and poems, I think saw this was probably the closest adaptation to that world that has been done in cinema. I mean, I also happen to be a fan of the Nirvana, and it's the first movie in the history where actually there is Nirvana music, because this was authorized by the family. I think Daniel made one of his best ever interpretations.
Yeah.
But it's fair. I mean, the movie did not get the visibility that we hoped, and I was upset about it.
Yeah. Is there anything you would have done differently on it?
Look, with hindsight, I think when we released the movie last year at Venice, there was a lot of other movies going on. I think the US acquisition market had already made all their acquisitions. We should have probably waited and released it later. But in our job, look, we do a business, and we need to be sure we do the business as best. But once again, we do also have to realize that the relation with talent is very important.
Yeah.
And the talent that was involved in that movie was very strongly wanting that movie to be released in that period. And so it was a classic kind of tension that happens in these cases. And I think it's still important for us to give the talent the acknowledgement that we try to do the best of what to do.
Yeah. Well, I think that's so important, to foster those relationships with talent. I mentioned earlier that I was going to come back on that, and it kind of touches on my next question, which, how does Fremantle approach your relationship with creators, balancing artistic vision and ensuring that artistic vision comes across, but also the economics of it and the economic results?
Look, I think, first of all, one of the things I always say is we don't have a template. That is, makes the life of our BA teams and our legal teams very complicated, and they probably hate me for this. But I resent the idea, having been on the other side sometimes, of the companies in this world that come to you and say, oh, this is our contract. You either sign this or, but this thing really I don't like. It's not the right thing for my project. Oh, I'm sorry, this is our template. You want to work for us, you work for us. But we don't have that. So the answer to your question is actually it's literally a different conversation / negotiation / agreement with each talent. Okay.
Right.
I think what we do offer is, of this I'm very, very sure, cultural and that cultural ecosystem that is pretty unique, because we operate across 28 territories. We have over 60 labels. We have more than 400, 500 great talent that work with us. And we do offer them a central support on production. There is a team that does, that has all the latest of what are the soft money happening across different territories. There's a team that is there to support on physical locations and on post-production. But really, I think the unique thing is we offer the possibility to each of these talent to speak with peers from Vietnam, from Chile, from the United States, from Canada, to exchange ideas, to proof ideas, to actually get suggestions. And when we do these kind of meetings, that is really, I think, one of the things I'm most proud when I see, Ed Berger speaking with Stefano Soldema, or, Paolo speaking with Jorgen Lantimos. But those are the big ones, okay? But there's also a lot of others that actually, and I think actually the others are the ones that probably get the most benefit of this. So I think that is really the thing we try to leverage more. And then in terms of the business side, look, again, every project goes by its own, and on every project we tend to build a different kind of model. So,
I'm also seeing that you're giving, these incredible filmmakers opportunities to tell stories in different ways, and so someone like Joe Wright with Mussolini and Thomas Vinterberg, like. These are opportunities for filmmakers to play in a different space that it feels very unique in terms of your ability to offer that.
Thank you. I can't add anything else to what you just said.
More of a statement than a question.
Thank you.
Kind of connected to that, how do you balance that kind of... We saw the clip earlier, and there's this incredible balance in terms of your slate of these like auteur-driven films and series, as well as extremely popular entertainment that does incredibly well with Canadians like Martin Short. How do you balance that in your overarching strategy?
I actually just learned that we have taped here this morning Family Feud Canada.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so,
there you go.
Look, that's what really fascinated me about Fremantle.
Yeah.
And I know the initial kind of thought when you see this, you can think, okay, these are separate silos. They don't. It's not true. Okay. Look, it's storytelling. Okay, it is storytelling, and look, I love sophisticated cinema. Okay, but I find myself with my family sometimes crying in front of a Got Talent act, or there's other stuff we do that where I don't cry, I laugh. There's other stuff where I'm slightly embarrassed, but not for the thing that is happening on the screen. But I mean, but it's actually great entertainment, so I'm fine. But I mean, look, it's ultimately it is storytelling. And look, I could answer you with the kind of business answer that is scripted business and movies have a time between conception and actual delivery and actual monetization that is 3-4 years sometime. So for a company to actually be able to have an incredible business that is actually generating constant, cash with the unscripted is also fundamental because it gives you solidity, okay? But ultimately, once again, I think the fascinating thing is that the teams that do... Look, Michaela here in Canada, she moves from scripted with incredible success like Sullivan's Crossing to unscripted and selling our formats in the most successful way ever. And it's not it's the same person and it's the same great executive, but the reason is because it's a cultural component I think that is very unique in our organization where you recognize the concept of storytelling.
Yeah, and even watching that clip earlier, going back to your point about surprises, the surprises are in both, right? They cross, whether you're an auteur filmmaker or you're watching, Family Feud, the surprises are still there.
Absolutely. Look, when we did X Factors on Sky, so first I think one thing. A lot of people don't believe, and on Got Talent, the judges do not know what happens on the stage. I know everybody thinks it's staged. It's not the case. The show would not work if that was the case. And so it's all based on a surprise, okay? And sometimes you literally say, okay. But in the X Factor, I mean, for example, I literally, there were a couple of cases where I was emotionally incredibly moved when you had, some 16-year-old go on the stage and have that so incredible talent that it moved you. So, and then it's the same thing that happens when I'm looking at some of our movies and they move me enormously. Yeah.
My next question is so it's TIFF's 50th edition this year. Coming off of Venice with all that success, premiering a series like Origin here today, which I know is a big passion project for yourself. I was curious about how you see the kind of evolution and the importance of festivals right now.
Oh, no, I think festivals are fundamental, especially for the space of movies that actually we are most passionate of, because ultimately they are the real way that movies can be spoken about across territories, and then that obviously generates attention and generates the possibility, frankly, also to find a distributor, but really to start to have passionate people that have watched it in a festival and then speak about it. Okay, I think it's if anything, it is probably today. I actually was having a conversation just before arriving here, where it is, I think, a fact that for certain type of movies, actually investing in having your talent go in festivals is now more important than actually doing traditional P&A and advertising for us. Oh, wow. Because ultimately, look, it is about word of mouth. Yeah. And word of mouth is more and more important. And again, it goes back to what we were discussing before. In a world where you open your iPad and you literally have 50,000 potential content you can watch, okay, you can trust the recommendation engine and you will do that. But we all know, look, we all know if you have been at dinner the evening before and somebody told you, oh, I watched a show, it's so incredible, that's what you're going to go and look for. And so there's not a better place than festivals, because the people who queue here in Toronto to watch movies, they love movies. They're going to be passionate. And look, and frankly, it's also a place where you get a honest feedback. Because in our business, we do this, I hate them, these friends and family screenings. Okay, so you do a movie, you do the friends and family screenings, and everybody comes out and says, it's incredible. It's the best movie you have ever done. And then they're all cousins, friends, and so then you actually get in a real place like this with real people that have queued for 2 hours, and they tell you, man, that wasn't a great movie.
Right.
And I say, okay. And you actually learn about it. And as I was saying before, you learn by mistakes, and then you try not to do the same mistake a second time.
Yeah. Well, my mom liked it.
Exactly.
Before I go to some audience questions, I did want to talk a little bit about innovation. AI is rapidly reshaping industries worldwide, not just our own, including the entertainment industry. What is Fremantle doing to stay proactive in this ever-changing space?
So that's something I have a very strong view about. So look, I think, first of all, let me say AI is going to have a massive impact in our society in all sectors. And in some of these sectors, it's really scary. And I hope governments, instead of focusing on things they should be less focused in, would focus on this kind of things. Because look, just let's think in the military or in surveillance, okay? But in our sector, I'm actually incredibly optimistic, because I see AI as just another massive shift in innovation. And exactly like when digital came and took the place of analog. And look, and let's go to directly also to the tough point. When that happened, you had tens of thousands of people that were working in printing film. Okay, those jobs went away. That's a fact. But another fact is, if you look at the amount of people that are employed in the creative industry today in the digital world versus the people that were employed in the analog world, it's a massive, massive bigger number. Okay. So what I do see with AI in creative production, this is a support to talent, to creatives, to manage to do things that today would be A, impossible, or B, probably more the second category, extremely expensive.
Right.
And so when I sat with some of our directors and I showed them some of the tools, they got fascinated. They said, okay, so I actually can do this without having to spend, $200,000, $300,000 on this kind of special effects. So that is I think the first way to see it. But then there is a more important component for me, that is that these tools will permit to a new generation of talent to emerge, because they are taking away the barrier to entry. And let me make, I think there is a parallel here with when the streaming world happened in the music industry. You all remember, no? So the streaming happens initially through computers, and the record companies just close their eyes and say, this is bad, we have to stop it, okay? The result was that they permitted the birth of illegal streaming through Napster. That was a way that took away every right and didn't control the right and copyright to artists. When they realized that actually the consumer was not gone away, because it was so clearly a much better way to consume music, finally the industry embraced it, and then we went from Napster to Spotify. But especially what happened is a new generation of talent was discovered. You would not have Billie Eilish today if you didn't have the streaming world, because no record company would audition a 13-year-old girl singing in her little room and would have not financed her record, okay? So I think the same thing happens in the audiovisual industry. We now will have talent from Chile, from Pakistan, from Indonesia, from Switzerland, that will have a great idea, that has had a great idea, and that could not physically produce it because he or she didn't have the money to do it, didn't have the connection, was not a parent of anybody in a US studio, and simply couldn't do it. And now they will be able to do it, and that will open the world to this talent, and it will be our job to look for them and actually give them the opportunity to do even more. And so I'm actually excited for that. Now, there is one point that obviously is fundamental, that is IP protection, copyright protection, the protection of the creativity. And that's why, for example, we are blessed to be part of our shareholders, Bertelsmann, and look, this is a company that does a lot of things, but ultimately has started the business as book publishers, as still the biggest book publishers in the world, and they could not understand IP protection better than anybody else. And so what we have done, for example, as a company, we have done specific deals with OpenAI, with Google, with Microsoft, where when we use the tools, anything we input in the tools stays behind a firewall and does not feed the algorithm, okay? So that means that if Sorrentino wants to put a little part, a section that he filmed and actually do some kind of correction on it, or, our writers want to put something they have written, that content will be fully protected and will not go away. And I think the creative community in the next years from today, months, will need to be making a very clear distinction between the companies that take this approach and the companies that don't take this approach, because that's going to be bad.
Yeah, well said. I'm going to open it up to some questions for the audience. I do have some more, but I'm going to throw it to here.
First off, thank you so much for sharing your vision. It's so uplifting to hear your embrace of creativity.
Thank you.
I'm an unrepresented writer, dark comedy series called Talk Dirty to Me about the first male phone sex operator. And what I'm wondering, thank you, that's the common response. Novel, surprising, different, not sexual, not graphic, it's intimate. How do unrepresented writers like me, and I'm sure there's many others in the room, get in front of visionaries like yourself and your company? Thank you.
Sorry, did I understand correctly? The story is about phone sex operators?
The first male phone sex operator.
Oh, okay. No, it's funny because we produced a show called Dirty Lines that our Dutch company produced a show about Dirty Lines. It's a fantastic show. It's by the way, it says the story of, the first sex phone service was done in Holland.
Yeah.
And the entire phone system went down. Because everybody was calling. And so these guys thought, okay, we're all going to get arrested. And,
Right.
and what happened is the day after, the telecom from, this is all a real story, the telecom from Holland went to meet these guys. They thought, okay, they're going to arrest us. And they said, no, continue to do it. We never did so much traffic. So they actually created an alternative system for them. Look, I think the answer, but to go back to your answer, and I want to, is the way we operate at Fremantle is not, there's not this corporate thing centrally that decides. We are a federation of labels, of territories, of creatives. So depending on where you are and where you operate, you should reach out to our teams here and to the labels here. And so Michela De Mondo is just there, and bring a project. And that's how it happens across Italy, France, Spain, the Netherlands, and the Nordics, US.
Time for one more question. Yeah, just right behind. Yeah.
Hi, I used to be with a
Sorry.
in Beverly Hills called
Participant.
and I was one of the original people there. And so we were in this interesting position. We had a lot of money, and we had every big star in Hollywood come to us with a passion project. And it was really, really difficult to find good scripts. And that's coming from the biggest agencies in Hollywood. I actually tried to solicit scripts from Canada. We got nothing. So are you having the same kind of problem? Two-part question. What is it? Do you have that type of problem finding really, really good material that you feel enthusiastic about both on the creative and the commercial potential for it? And the other thing is with the changes coming in streaming now, because movies seem to be getting worse, quite frankly. The level of creativity is now not what it was. The focus tends to be on big franchise, Harry Potter, comic book movies. And what seems to be really generating the most excitement and creativity is in the streaming service and the limited series or some things like Slow Horses or whatever. Is that something that you've been finding as well?
I think I didn't hear all the second part, but I heard the first one, I think. So the first one was if we're challenged in finding good scripts, if I understood the correct question. Look, I think finding good material in general is always a challenge because there's not a lot of good material by definition, okay? But I think the model we have built where we have a lot of relation with talent, including writing talent. We have first look deals with several incredibly talented people, gives us the opportunity to access a lot of good material. And again, the model we have that is based on production entities very rooted in the territory means those entities have they have a constant interaction with the creative environment in the territory where they operate. I think we do not really operate very much in the classic US studio model where scripts come in. Now, sometimes that happens. I actually happen to have recognized somebody in the first row that sent me a script that I read 2 weeks ago that I found fascinating. So, I mean, it happens, but it's not really the way we operate. Regarding the quality of films on streaming services, I don't know. Look, I think that's more a question for the streaming services than for us. We try to always do some high quality films. Actually, I think did we have a little clip on our movies?
Yes,
But it's too late.
No. I think we have some time to show it, or okay.
Okay, no time. Okay, but we try. Look, we try to do our best to make movies that are the best that can be done.
Yeah. Well, Andrea, thank you for joining us. This was
thank you for having me.
Incredible conversation. Could have done it for another hour.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate it.